Okay, I just started the recording. So, so this is the first video of our tutorial. So we are going to discuss about DevOps, and we will start with DevOps overview and what is DevOps, the general confusions with DevOps, and different questions and doubts with DevOps. Then maybe in later videos we will slowly get into different technical things and different technical tools, and we'll go deeper and deeper while we record more and more videos. So today we are starting with first series. So we are going to discuss about what is DevOps and just try to get a better understanding about DevOps. So yeah, we are not going to uh, tell any textbook answers like predefined text answers. We are just going to discuss. Um, so like in general in coffee break, how we will discuss. So same way we are going to discuss to get an understanding. So just to start with, so before starting the recording, me and my friend were discussing about the general question. So I have just put together a couple of questions here. So the first question comes is what is DevOps? So DevOps as when we Google as we get answers. Um, so the general answer we will get is DevOps is development plus operations. So what does that mean generally? So that boils down to all different questions. So the so DevOps is generally development operations. That's how the name came. But nowadays it has been changed so differently, and every company have their own answers of what is DevOps. There is no single answer for what is DevOps. So every company have their own answer, depending on the size of the company, depending on the work culture of the company. It changes to company. So so generally, is it a tool or a process? So basically, it's a both. So what is a process? So in process, we generally have in a software development lifecycle model. In process, generally we have waterfall method and agile method, and there are other methods which not being generally used. So nowadays, every company uses agile method. So so what happens in agile method? So generally, this is how will be a agile sprint. So generally, there will be a 2 week sprint. In that, there will be a sprint planning. So where everybody comes and discuss. So generally, what happens there will, for example, in enterprise company or in a large scale company, there will be multiple teams for a project. There might be 2 or 3 development teams for a single project or more than that. So what happens? There will be a PI planning, and that happens like every 3 months once or every 6 months once. So at that time, every team comes together and plan what are they going to do for the next 3 months or 6 months. So that's what they will do in the PA planning for the 2 days. So everybody discuss, okay, this is what we are going to do, and they decide on what they are going to do. If whatever they discussed is possible or not to do, they will vote at the end of the PA planning. Then they will decide, okay, these are the things we are going to do. So then that boils down into different sprints in Agile. So for example, if we take 3 weeks PA planning, for a PA, if we take 3 weeks, so sprint, for example, if we are taking 2 week sprint, so there will be 6 sprints in a release in a 3 months. So in that 2 week sprint, so there will be sprint planning at the start of the sprint. Then whatever the story is decided on the PA planning, so that will be prioritized on the sprint planning. For example, if we are taking 5 user stories, the 5 user stories will be taken into consideration for the sprint. Then discussion will happen on how to do that. So design will happen, and development will happen for a long time. For example, if 2 week sprint, maybe development might happen in a 10 day sprint, it might happen 7 to 8 days. So then testing will happen and demo will happen. Then whatever implemented will be demoed to the customer. Then customer will give feedback. So once the feedback is done, then there will be a sprint retrospective. There we will discuss So what went well and what went wrong, what went wrong. So based on those feedbacks, we will change or we will improve our way of working or whatever we have to do in the next sprints to make the release successful, upcoming release successful. Sankar, do you have any questions? Whatever I told is correct or wrong?
Uh, uh, no, everything is as per like or however the application is going into production, the way how
Mm-hmm.
the sprint is planning. So these are
Mm-hmm.
all the basic life cycle of the software product. So no issues on that.
Okay. So on this, so we are discussing all this so that we will get a better understanding about what is DevOps. So we will definitely try to answer that question. So
So the
hmm,
one question,
yeah,
Karthik,
yeah. Tell me,
how
tell me.
this agile is linked with DevOps?
Okay, that's
Why?
what I'm going to speak now. That's
Mm,
what.
mm.
So in a software development lifecycle, so you will have basically different teams. So we will be having many teams in a corporate, but I'm just putting like very basic examples so that we will get a better understanding. We are not going to get into like database team, Spark team, Knock team, this team, that team. So there will be many teams. I understand that, but to have understanding of what is DevOps in a high level, so I'm just putting only three teams here. So for example, we will have a development team who develops the application. We will be having testing team who testing the application, and there will be operations team who takes care of the backend infrastructure. So assume we are going to create a website for a small company. Maybe for which example we can take, Sankar?
Uh,
Any
eh,
just yeah.
yeah, like any website. Just let's say we wanted to have a tutorial website about this
Okay.
DevOps.
Yeah, okay. So for example, we are going to create a tutorials DevOps site. So for that, so we have to for a website to be up and running. First, we need um, a developer who develops the website. For example, he develops in his own laptop. Assume he has a laptop, he develops in his own laptop. For example, he uses Angular JS or React JS, whatever for the front end, and he uses in the backend maybe Java or whatever the technology is comfortable for him. Maybe Python or Java or whatever. So he does everything on his laptop first, right? So once he does his development, for example, he is ready with the home page. First, he is ready with the home page. Then maybe we have a tester who tests the application and says, okay, these are all working fine. So what developer does is he will give whatever he developed in his laptop, he will pass it on to the tester through email or through GitHub repository or some mechanism. He simply passes the information to tester. So then the tester takes that information and he set up um, the tool or whatever the website the developer developed into the tester's laptop, right? So for example, that might take 1 day. I'm just telling it for very simple application. So in a large scale company, it might take more time. I'm just giving an example like in our DevOps video tutorial website development. So for the tester to set up the thing and to get up and running, it might take 1 day. Then he performs testing. For example, that again take one more day. Then after 2 days, he informs developer, okay, everything's fine. Then there is another person who is a operations guy. This guy decides, okay, now we have something. We have to um, deploy this application somewhere so that the website is up and running so that everybody can access. For example, DevOpsVideoTutorials.com. So even if everybody opens DevOpsTutorialsVideo.com, this website should up and running. So that is the job of operations team. So operation guy comes and he takes the same instruction from developer or tester. Then he puts that generally from developer he takes. Then he puts that into then with his skill set about cloud or whatever where he wants to deploy. Maybe he buys a hosting website from third party vendor. So the hosting third party vendor have their own documentation on how to deploy the website into their hosting site. So basically, the operations guy takes the knowledge from developer and combines his knowledge of how to deploy that into hosting site. Then he deploys the application, and maybe he has to buy the domain for the DevOpsVideoTutorials.com from GoDaddy or Namecheap.com or AWS, Route 53, whatever service available to buy domain. So then see, he has to buy some place where he can deploy the code, the Java code, the AngularJS code. It has to store somewhere so that when developers open, when the users open DevOpsVideoTutorials.com, the website will come, right? So that is what the operations guy will do. Do you have any questions, Shankar, on this?
Yes. So whatever the infrastructure developer is having, will the same set of infrastructure to be maintained for your testing team, operations team, everyone?
So
same infrastructure.
So that is the idea, right? So it should be same. That is the idea. But in this example, whatever we are discussing, it may not be the case, right? The developer might be using Windows box, Windows laptop. The tester might be using Mac system, and the operation guy might be using Linux. He likes Linux, so he want to use Linux. So everything is different. So that is why I'm telling it will take. So for example, I told 2 days for the tester to set up the infrastructure and to do the testing. So what if the developer, whatever steps given by developer is not matching with tester's laptop? It may take another 2 days for him to do all those things.
Do configurations.
Yes. Okay. So we will. So that is what the thing is, right? So when the manager says in a project, okay, you are going to develop, you are going to test, you are going to deploy. Why you need 7 days? You can just do it in 3 days, right? And the manager will simply say, okay, you can buy in GoDaddy.com within 10 minutes, and you can buy hosting site within 2 hours, and you can just copy paste the code within 1 hour. Within 5 hours, you can done. Why you need 1 week? But in practical, that is not the case. In practical scenario, we will run into lots and lots of challenges, technical challenges. Right?
Okay.
Every day, even in development, testing, or operations, every engineer might be running into lots and lots of challenges that management does not aware.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
So basically, the development environment, even the UAT environment or QA environment, we will have similar different set of configurations for each and every environment. So there itself, people face some challenges.
Right. So yes. So yeah. So what happens in what happens here? So this is what happens, right? It happens separately. So developers does everything separately, and tester does everything separately. Operations teams does everything separately. So these were the main challenges before DevOps comes into picture. So someone thought about this, then he thought, okay, we will create some process. I'm just telling it as a process as of now. It will change later. So someone thought of this problem, and he created a process to solve this problem. So how do we make it simpler so that we don't have to run into all these challenges, right? So then what he thought is, I don't know who thought of this, he or she. So whatever person who thought that, or it might be a group of people in a company. So what they thought is like, okay, what if we just include all these 3 different teams into a single team, right? So when at the time itself, at the time of writing code itself, developer will tell to tester, okay, I'm going to do development in Java. I'm going to do testing in I'm going to do front-end development in AngularJS, backend development in Java. I'm going to use in Java Spring Boot framework. In AngularJS, I'm going to use version 6 dot whatever, right? So before starting the development itself, he will give lots of information to tester, right? So then the tester will go and set up everything and be ready at the same time while the developer is doing development. The same thing happens with operations team, right? So maybe let's remove this. Let's talk about only development and operations because that's what DevOps says. But in general scenario, it includes this as well. That's what it happened now. But let's speak about only these two. So while doing development itself, he will give all the information to operations team. So operation guy, what he will do is he will go and set up everything predefined before he complete the development itself. So that is one thing. And whatever changes he is doing, so both of them will be aware. So whatever operation guy is doing, developer will aware. Whatever developer will doing, operations guys will aware. So I actually forgot to tell one important thing. So there will be an architecture guy in actual project, right? So who will be doing the architecture decisions and all those things, right? So that architect also will come into picture, and he should be aware of how to do development and how to do operations. So for example, whatever hosting platform this operation guy purchased, that might not support AngularJS, right? So what will happen? The developer develops everything and he gives it to operations guy. Then he tries to deploy. Then he tells, hey, AngularJS does not support. We don't support AngularJS, right? Then he has to again do everything from scratch, right?
So the architecture guy gives you the infrastructure. This is what we are going to have. This is what the server is. This is what our programming language. All those things will be decided by architecture guy.
So right. So if that happens, that will be more streamlined. But I'm not sure if that is happening in all the company. And
Okay.
I'm not an so also generally we are not an expert who worked in Google or the top notch company in the world, right? So I'm just telling everything to my best understanding and best knowledge. So yes,
Okay.
so generally if the architect decides what's happening in both the place, then it will basically streamline the process, right? So we don't get into unexpected issues or unexpected challenges at the last time.
Correct.
Right. So
yes.
Right. So that is one thing, right? So the next thing is how. So as we discussed, the developer might be using Windows and he might be using Linux. So how do we solve that problem, right? So that is where virtualization and Docker and all those things comes into picture, right? So what if he is doing something and he is preparing everything into single file and he is passing that file to this guy. Then this guy simply deploys that single file and he is done, right? How easy it will be.
It is the best way. No need to do any change, configuration setups, all those things.
Right. So that is what basically Docker does. Docker and virtualization does, right? But it's I'm telling like so easy, but there are challenges with that as well. That is where the job of DevOps people comes into picture.
Okay.
Right. So for example, someone asked me to send some 10 documents. Maybe each document is a different PDF file. Each of them have like each of them have different page numbers. For example, one document might have 5 pages, another document might have 6 pages. So instead of sending them separately, what if we just combine everything into a single PDF and just pass it on?
Okay.
Right. So same thing. So what if everything is packaged into single file and that passed to operations team? So that is then it's done, right? That is one way. That is one way, right? So some companies does like that. So another way is, so what if developer only does development, everything else done by operation team, right? So what is that mean is, for example, when he starts developer, he puts his code into GitHub, okay, and he tells,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
I'm going to do development in Java, I'm going to use Spring Boot, and I'm going to use Maven to build my application, right? So he does everything. He does development in local in his laptop. Local means generally in laptop. So that is the term in DevOps. I mean, in everywhere we call it as local means it's laptop. So developer does his development in his local. So everything else will be taken by operations team, right?
Okay.
So for example, he will just tell, okay, this is my GitHub repository. You do whatever you want to do. That's it. His job is just to only develop, right? You don't have to worry about where the application is getting deployed, how the application is deployed, nothing, right? So what he will do is he will just do development. So for example, he develops the application and he takes that code, he builds the code. Then testing team, he passed the URL to testing team does the testing. So that's what is happening, right? So then in that case, what will happen? Developer will come and ask, okay, in production there is a issue, so how do I see my logs? So where is the logs, right? That is what this guy will ask, developer will ask. Developer is only interested in troubleshooting the issue and solving the issue. He don't have to worry about where it is deployed, how it is deployed. His job is to develop. If there are any issues, okay, I want to see what is the issue. To see what is the issue, he need logs or some other information, right? That we will discuss when we go deeper. Generally, first thing he will ask is, where is the logs? Is there any error message in the logs, right?
Correct.
So then what is the job of this operation guy is, he will generally takes his GitHub repository code. He knows, okay, this is Java code. Okay, I have to do some build tool to build this application. For example, Maven or Gradle, whatever, the Java build tool. Then he will aware of how to deploy that application. He will aware of where to deploy this application. He will aware of how to monitor that application and everything, right? Then he will know where the logs are there, and he will just give uh, access to logs to the developer. He will give some URL, or he will send the logs in email, and that depends on company to company. Okay, so the operation guy will only give whatever information the developer needs, right? So this is second way. So so first way is like he does everything and he packages that into a Docker image, or the maybe we can discuss about Docker or virtualization later. But he develops everything and he combines everything into a single file and he passes that to the operation guy. The second thing is, like I said, the developer only focuses on development and everything else taken care by operation guy. Okay, these are the two different ways basically happens nowadays from my experience. There are other different ways, but so from my recent experience, this is what happening. So in the second example, what I said, so that is what is DevOps. Okay. So what will happen is the developer will develop, and the DevOps team, the team will be responsible for building the code, deploying the code, monitoring the application, and if there are any issues, how to share the logs to this guy, and how to give him the information about how the application is performing when there is a load, and all those things, right? So
Okay.
I told about architects because so for example, so in our DevOps video tutorial, for example, we are starting a website, and there are in a first month, assume there are only 10 users. Okay. And we have bought one hosting provider, and that hosting provider basically deploys our application in, for example, in one server. Let's call it a server, so that we are just starting, so you'll get into complex naming later. So in one server, and that server is just only one CPU and, for example, 2 GB RAM. Okay, so this is where the application is deployed. So the application might be, for to run the Java application, it might be deployed into Tomcat. Okay, for deploying Angular application, it might be running in Apache or Nginx web server, right? So first month 10 users are there, everything works fine, everything goes well, and suddenly second month, what happens? Our video become popular. that that might not happen, but just assume video become popular, and suddenly 100 users came, right?
Okay.
And this server is not able to handle the request.
Okay.
Right. So then we have to increase the server to handle more users, right? So then what the operation guy have to do, he has to, whatever the what he already did, he has to repeat it again. He has to create one more server, he has to do, and all those things, right? So or this is one way, or he has to increase the CPU and memory of the server to handle more requests.
Correct.
Okay, so this is what called horizontal scaling. So basically, when we add more server, we do like this. So it's horizontal. So we are telling it as horizontal scaling. When we increase the resources of the same server, we basically remove this server, or we use the same server, and we increase the CPU and memory on the same server. So this is what called is vertical scaling. So this term is generally very famous in cloud. So this will be asked in many interview questions. So what is horizontal scaling and what is vertical scaling? So why I am telling this is, sorry. Now why I am telling this is, so for example, in our example, we deployed the application like this, right? So we first initially deployed with one server. So suddenly more users came, and we want to increase the server resources to more CPU and memory. For example, we are trying to do this. So this is the appropriate way, or a better way. Horizontal scaling is the better way in generally in cloud, instead of doing vertical scaling, because we cannot keep on going, increasing the resources, because so maybe second month there might be 100 users. What if third month the 100 users become 50 users, right? Then we have to reduce the CPU and memory, and so otherwise we will be paying more, and we will not get profit from 50 users, and we might run into loss. Business might run into loss, right? So
correct.
We have to use only, we have to pay for only what we are using, right? So that is another feature of cloud. So all these things we will get into later, but the important thing why I'm telling is, so when there is a change in the business requirement, right? So in general scenario, that's what happened, right? In actual business scenario, there might be lots of change. So how does the developers, and how does the operation guys, or how does the DevOps guys react to these changes, and how quickly they can adapt their application to those changes, right? So that is why I talked about architect, who will be deciding something on both ends, right? So he knows, okay, when this he from his experience he will know, okay, when this happens, this has to do. So he can plan that from the beginning instead of suddenly getting some change like this and re-architecting application to adapt this change. So what if the server is not sorry, the application is not written in some way, like if we deploy into two different servers, it will not it will not properly work, right? So we might run into those challenges. That's why I told the architect guy is little important. So that is why cloud and cloud features are more important. We will be paying only for what we use. And if we do proper architecting at the infrastructure level, and also if we do proper architecting at the development level, that development supports these kind of architectures, then everything will go smooth. Otherwise, there will be lots of challenges here and there, right?
Yes.
Do you have any questions, Shankar?
No. Means we can understand what is horizontal scaling and what is vertical scaling,
Yeah.
and how
So
important it is to have the same infrastructure all over the teams.
yeah. So I again. So let's speak about different teams, right? So there might be a performance team. So this team might be responsible for testing the performance of the application and telling, okay, something is wrong, we have to fix these things before going into production and all those things, right? So suddenly this team comes into picture, and for example, when for example 100 users become 200 users or 300 users, even we are scaling more and more. We are, for example, we are adding 4 servers. Okay, still the application is not performing well, and there are some problems and all those things, right? So then we have to do performance testing and all those things, right? So at the time of doing performance testing, these people come and tell, okay, production is used by customers, and there might be another environment for developers who does development and to locally test their changes in development environment. And these guys will come and tell, okay, I want completely new, different new environment, um, same as production. There should not be any changes between production and performance testing environment, right? Because we might be testing application in different environment, and production might be running some other environment. So there is no point of doing performance testing, right? It should be same. So how does the performance team gets the same, not same environment, the similar environment as production, right? And these guys will come and tell, okay, customers are facing lots of issues, so we have to do performance testing and analyze the problem as soon as possible. We have to create the environment within 1 day, right? But what we discussed at the initial time, the DevOps guy or the operation guy, he took 3 days or 2 days to create the environment, right?
Yes.
So those are all the challenges, right? So that is where the automation tools comes into picture. So there is a tool called Terraform that can be used to automate the infrastructure provisioning. So when we do automation and everything is proper, when the performance testing comes and asks, okay, I want a new environment, we just have to run the Terraform script. The application, the new infrastructure will be ready, and we can just give it to him. So that is also job of the DevOps guy, right? So like this, there might be so many. So obviously, we are just speaking about only things which comes into mind for us now. There might be lots of challenges like this. We are just taking an example of the small tutorial application. So think about the large scale of the banking system, um, or like applications like Twitter. So how do they do all these things? So there are like crores of people using their application like Facebook, Google. How they are doing? So they are already having so advanced technologies we cannot even imagine, right? So we are just speaking about very basic things. right? So that is where all the tools comes into picture, um, and different technologies comes into picture. And if I take a different example for so the performance team, they want to do performance testing, and they want JMeter. So JMeter is an open source performance testing tool, and they want to set up JMeter, and they want to run JMeter in cloud so that they can test the performance of the application. So how come they will get it in 1 day or 2 day? Again, so the DevOps guys comes into picture. They provision infrastructure for them with running JMeter and all those things properly, right? So
Okay.
so that is what happens. So basically, um, so development team does development, testing team does development. Maybe there might be a database team. They do database changes and handles database about everything about database. So generally, DevOps team's role is handling the infrastructure part, right? Handling the infrastructure part and how to handle them efficiently and how fast they can do. And also, when it comes to infrastructure, it also, so there might be a team called build team, right? So these guys will take this code of developers and they build them and they deploy to infrastructure. So this also comes into DevOps now, right? So there might be another team called release team. So these guys handles how to release the application to production, when to release, what to release, and all those things. That is also now comes into DevOps, right? Because the DevOps team is responsible for putting the process of how the application goes into production, right? From development to testing to staging, then pre-production and production, all those things, right? So DevOps teams is responsible to put the process to move the code from development to production. So earlier, maybe now also, there are so many companies. That's what I told initially. There is no single definition of DevOps. Every company have their own. But for example, in a startup like um, um, any startup, like small startups, they are having a good product and that is very famous, but they are very small. uh, Generally this is what they do. They will be having a development team and testing team and DevOps team. That's it, right? So obviously I'm speaking about technical teams. There might be management team and all those teams, but I'm just speaking about technical teams. So these are the things. Yeah, tell me,
So
tell me.
Karthi, so it is just like DevOps process is just like a middleware kind of thing between developers and to the users, production to the users. So they do all build, release, deployment,
Right, correct,
and
right.
scaling. Okay. Okay.
So,
Okay.
so if you think about the development plus operations now, I think you can understand why the name comes development plus operation, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So another thing to note is, so when a sprint happens, everything, all these are generally what people think is okay. All these things, user story, creation, design, development, planning, everything is responsible of development team, right?
Yes. Yes.
That is not the case anymore, right? So uh, even DevOps team is part of this now, because DevOps team
Oh,
should know how the application is designed. Does it support AWS? Does it support in AWS? Does it support Lambda functions? The code written that can be deployed into Lambda functions, the code written that can be deployed into Kubernetes. So all those things DevOps team should decide, right? So DevOps team is part of the sprint planning and every phase of sprint planning. So they can tell, okay, you can do this, you can do that, and all those things from the uh, day one, instead of instead of waiting for the developer to build everything and pass it on, then suddenly getting shocked. Okay, we cannot deploy this. We need another 2 weeks or we need another 2 months, right?
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's
So
go
that's
back.
what
Mm.
That's what you said it initially. So developer will tell, I'm going to use AngularJS, I'm going to use Java, those kind of things.
Right.
Okay.
So now, I'm not sure if I can tell this, but generally what is happening now is, so developer is focusing only on development because he can only focus on business logic and all those things, right? You don't have to worry about all those other issues like is it deployed into AWS? Okay, I have to do like this. So all these things will be taken care by these guys, DevOps guys. So developer can only focus on development and he can do his job better. So let's go back to our questions. So I think we discussed about this related to. So I think this slide speaks about this related to software development life cycle. Okay, this is an interesting question. Is it an advanced version of Agile? So what do you think?
So it is speeding up the process, I guess.
Right. So we can say it, yes, partly, but generally what happens, it helps Agile to happen actual Agile, right? Right. So that is what it is. So how is it related to cloud? So that is what we discussed here, right? That's what we discussed here. So it is very important. So the architecture of the application now follows the DevOps practices. For example, there is something called cloud native, right? So do we have time? Can I speak about this, or we spoke too much?
Okay, so we have time. We can.
Okay, so let's quickly tell 2-3 points, then we will end up. Okay. So how it is related to cloud, right? Okay, I actually forgot what I thought some good point. I actually forgot.
Means for scaling part, you said for creating an environment or something.
That is one thing. I actually thought about something else. Okay. Anyways, it's about, tell me.
Just means how it is going to do we need to have any prerequisites? I was about to talk the next question.
Okay. Maybe if you remember about this, I will come back to it. But so prerequisite, right? So that is another good question. So let's think about what all we discussed and try to answer that question. So as I told, DevOps teams also build team, right? So
yes.
What is that? What is the meaning of that? So this team have to build the code and deploy it to environments, right? So to build the code, we have to use some tools, right? We cannot simply every time we cannot manually build from our laptop and manually deploy it, right? So we have to put a process or tool that helps to do all these things, right?
Okay.
For example, this single DevOps team can support. So there are organizations, there are companies that has one DevOps team. That DevOps team may be having some 10 or 15 people. I'm just taking some sample number. It might vary. So those 15 people is responsible for hundreds of development team, right?
Okay.
So how they support one single team? So in hundreds of development means I'm actually telling it's actually hundreds of development team. In each development team there will be 10-15 people, right? So there might be 1,500 people. 15-20 people is handling 1,500 people's build, release, deployment, monitoring, and all those things, right? So how it will happen, because they have to use different tools and technologies. they have to do automation, and they have to do all smart things, right? So to do all these, for example, to build the application, there is a tool called Jenkins, right?
Okay.
So how do you make Jenkins to work, build and deploy? So obviously, we have to write some scripts, right?
Yes.
So
Mm.
we have to write some script to tell Jenkins, okay, this is what I want, right? So basically, we have to do automation. So to do automation, we have to do coding. We have to write automation. So it might be like writing shell script. So generally, what people do is people write shell script and they call the shell script from Jenkins.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, that is not bad. That is good starting point, or that is good for small teams or something. But when it comes to like managing single team, managing hundreds of development team, so we have to do proper coding, or even if not proper coding, we have to do proper. We have to follow proper patterns, so that, for example, there are 100 teams. Suddenly, 10 new teams. Company is expanding. Company is growing fast. 10 new teams comes, and we have to onboard 10 new teams into this DevOps process, right? So the automation created by these teams should be easily scalable, right? When new teams comes into the company, they should be able to easily onboarded, and they should be able to build and deploy the application, right? So the automation created by these guys should support that, right? So
Yes. Yes.
these guys cannot create again. This cannot write 10 new different Jenkins files, 10 new different things, and all those things, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
one of the key things is standardization, right? So that is what big companies like Twitter, Google, and all those people follows. So they will set a standard like, okay, 100 teams are there, no problem. All 100 teams use Spring Boot Java, or 100 teams use AngularJS or React.js, right? So the job of these guys will become simpler, right?
Okay.
So everybody will be doing the same thing. So these guys have to just put everything into actual um, 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 the automation should just consider only those things. So this job of these guys will be simpler. So to do that, these guys have to do shell scripting, or if the application is deployed into Windows, they have to do PowerShell scripting, right? So to deploy into infrastructure, Terraform is required. So Terraform is, again, it's not actual programming language, but so we have to understand how Terraform works, and we have to write the Terraform script or Terraform code, whatever it's called. Or in some cases, what happens? Um, so just to give an example, suddenly, so okay, for example, um, um, so if we take our example, videotutorials.com, right? So we have different teams, right? So for example, different teams have their own environment, right? Suddenly management is coming and asking, okay, our AWS cloud bill or Google cloud bill is for per month this much. We cannot pay this much. We have to reduce the bill, right? So then we can think about different options how we can reduce the billing, right? So the one of the things we can do is, so development team will be using the development environment only at the time of development. That means they will be using from morning to evening, right?
Okay.
They will not be using it at night. So what we have to do is we have to shut down the environment at night and only make it up and running in the morning, so that we get charged for only for the daytime.
Correct.
How do we do that? For example, there are 50 servers in the cloud we are using. So we have to write some Python scripts, or whatever, Python scripts or JavaScript or Ruby script, whatever that calls this AWS APIs and tells, okay, every time the script might run every day 7 p.m. evening, until, okay, I don't want these environments to run. I will shut down at 7 p.m. And morning 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. before everybody comes to office, it will automatically start, and the script will run, and it will automatically start all the servers, right? To do that, we have to write some Python scripting, right? So that is what will happen about the prerequisite. So yes, we have to know about. We don't have to do um, um, like actual development. Like we like we no need to know about all the super algorithms which is available. But we have to know at least basic coding to do all this, right?
Okay.
So calling Python, I mean calling AWS API with some basic Python script, it's learning that it's not going to take, it's not that difficult from my experience, right? So
Okay.
AWS documentation will tell, okay, this is how you are going to, this is the APIs, this is how you are going to call, you are going to call, this is the authentication you are going to pass, and all those things. So, so again, for the prerequisite questions, to understand all those, we should basically know how the REST API works, right?
Okay.
And how the server works and all those things, right? So those are all the prerequisites. So that is um, so whoever is, for example, worked on a basic development project, they will know all those things, right? So if somebody worked on different kinds of like operations or support kind of thing, then yeah, so that is one of the requirement, like how REST API works, how basically how the application works. So whatever how the website works, how the software works. So those basic understanding, if we have, then we can basically pick up all these things, right? So for example, as I told about this simple DevOps video tutorial application that is having a Java backend and AngularJS frontend. So how the AngularJS frontend triggers or calls the backend, and how does the Java backend stores the data in database, right? So if these are all not necessarily prerequisites, but if we know all these, we will become a very good DevOps engineer.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, so we have to know some. We should be able to write some programming um, language. Some knowledge is enough, and how things works in a high level, that will definitely help. If not, we can start with one of them, and we can learn, and we can always learn. And there are so many tutorials in online. We can learn about those.
Okay.
Any questions, or did I answer the question, or
No, everything is answered very well.
okay? So how is going to help me improve my skill set? Yes. So okay, to answer this question, let's go to, let me show this. So there is something called this, right? Have you heard about this, Sankar?
No.
Okay. So SRE is, what is this? Is it is an advanced version of DevOps.
Okay.
Okay, because this role itself is basically designed by Google. So if you see, is what, when you get treat operation as if it is a software platform, right? So basically what they are telling is operation team is also a development team. That's what these people are telling.
Okay.
So even I'm not an expert with this. So yeah, so even I'm learning about this. I'm just showing this because it's a DevOps overview. So it's good to know about this.
Okay. So it is like you need to understand how the code is deployed into production infrastructure way,
Right.
and how the operations are happening.
Mm.
So how the users are using, and how to take the log back to the development, and how are we going to maintain the version of code and all those things. Okay.
So it might look simple when we hear it, but assume, for example, this example, right? So we have 4 different servers. Okay. How the developer will see the logs of 4 different servers?
So obviously you need to combine it.
Right. So yeah, so we cannot tell developer, okay, log in and take this SSH key login into
If you
this
don't
box,
find anything.
go to this location. We cannot tell all these things to this guy, right? So we are in 2021 and everybody is fast, and market is very very competitive, and everybody want to release the product very fast. So we cannot tell the developer, okay, log into each one of these parts and you find yourself where the request goes and which server has the error.
So we want to log off.
Yeah, so we have to have some. So for everything, not everything, for most of the things, there are tools being actively developed, right? It's because we are not only one doing DevOps, right? We are discussing about this because it became famous. It become famous means there are already people are doing so many things, right? So, for example, with site reliability engineering, just to give an example, so I read about some in blog. So what happens is, so a developer develops the application and put it into production. I mean, the DevOps team or SRE team put it into production, and they just, that's it. Their job is done. Okay. So there is a production issue, and there is a issue with the performance in the application, in the code, application code.
Okay.
So the SRE, site reliability engineer, he went and he understand the code and he fixed the bug in the code.
Okay.
So that is how in Google people works. So they basically don't wait for, okay, this is the error. Generally what happens, there will be so many people in between, right? When P1 comes, one guy will see the ticket, okay, this is the error. Pass it to level 2. Then level 2 guy says, okay, this is the error. Then pass it to database team. Database team sees, okay, application is calling so many queries. So you cannot call so many queries. Then application development team comes. Then development team sees this. Then they will take that into next sprint.
Correct.
They will
and
tell,
they need to do yes, and they need to do a lot of replicating the issue. That is where the big challenge is.
So they will take that in next sprint. They will analyze, develop. It might not complete in that sprint. It might move to next sprint. Correct. So it will take month to fix a bug. So that is one of the example I'm giving about this. So that is differently people are working now, and maybe whoever seeing this video might maybe already know this.
That's fine.
Yeah. So what other questions we have? So
everything
this is how is going to help improve skill set.
Maybe site.
So in software industry, it's nothing is constant. Everything will keep on changing. We have to learn new things. So maybe this is one of the knowing about or learning about these things is one of the opportunity to learn more things.
Yes.
So speaking about
thank
this.
You, Karthik.
Okay.
And today, really, I came to know about what is DevOps and how this is going to help the software development, and how these things, what are the prerequisites, or what knowledge is required to understand the DevOps, or what kind of, because as you said, each company follows a different process and they consider that as a DevOps. So good. Thank you for that.
Okay, no problem. Anything else? I think we spoke too much. Okay. So we will end up this.
Okay.
Let's stop scaring and stop recording.
Okay.